Mark describes Pontius Pilate with these words. He knew that it was out of envy that the leaders of the people wanted to condemn Jesus. He knew. Pilate is not a positive character in this gospel story. Now, if you read John's account, John is trying to make Pilate look a bit better. Mark is very direct. Mark says he knew and yet he did what was wrong. Why do people do what they know is not right? Why do we choose actions that we know are not true or just or fair? It's a different story if you don't know what is right and wrong. Then we can excuse you. But if you know, what is your excuse? Did you hear about a big international convention a few weeks ago of hundreds of people who believe that the earth is flat? They rented a whole convention center, and there were hundreds of them from different countries talking for 3 days about the science of flat earth. And I'm thinking to myself that they should have the big picture of Pontius Pilate behind the main stage, for he knew and yet did something opposite. At this day and age, there is no way you don't know that the earth is not flat. So if you choose to believe that the earth is flat, Pilate should be your role model. He can be your patron saint of knowing what is true and still doing the opposite. What the heck? Don't confuse me with the facts or science. Don't give me your truth. I know it's not true. Pilate is the patron saint of people who know and yet choose to ignore the facts, choose to ignore the data and still do the opposite. Why do people act like that? In his case, it was his career. He wanted to climb the ladder. So, in order to avoid unnecessary uprising, he just went with the flow. You see, Pilate was a governor of a God-forsaken easternmost province of the Roman Empire. If he wanted one day to be advanced, he had to have a good track record in Jerusalem. And having an uprising on his hands would not be looking good on his CV when he goes on. So he knows that Jesus is innocent, but what the heck? My career is more important. What are the other reasons people do what is wrong even they know what is right? Sometimes it's out of love. If your husband believes that the earth is flat, for the sake of peace in your home, you say, "Of course, honey, the earth is flat." sometimes we care about the person so much that we are willing to agree with her or him, just not to annoy him or her too much. Why else do people do what they know is wrong? Sometimes it's peer pressure. If everybody around you is doing something and you are the only one who is thinking to herself, what the heck is wrong with you? At one point you may decide, you know what, it's not worth fighting about. If they all think that 2 + 2 = 5, let them be. And so we choose to go along because everybody else thinks that 2 + 2 = 5. We know it's not true, and yet we pretend it is. There are countless examples when we behave like Pilate. We know, and yet we do the opposite. In this account of Jesus' passion, death in Mark Gospel, most of the guys, most of the men play very negative characters. Now, women, it's a different story. At the very beginning of today's reading, you heard of a woman who came to Jesus with extremely expensive jar of a precious oil, and she anointed the feet of Jesus with that super duper expensive oil. The disciples are looking at themselves and say, what the heck is wrong with her? We could have bought a business ticket to Jerusalem for all that money. I think this is a great first example of misogyny among Christians. What is this woman doing? And Jesus, surprisingly, or actually not surprisingly, takes the side of a woman, being the first Christian feminist, and he says, let her alone, guys. She's doing what she believes to be true and right. People will tell the story of her every time they retell my story. And all other female characters in that story of Mark are great positive role models. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, that woman with the alabaster oil, and so many others. So today, as you were listening to the passage of Jesus' passion, I beg you, do not be like Pilate. Do not be like that governor of Judea, knowing what is right and still choosing the opposite. Be like the many women in the Gospel of Mark. Have pride in knowing and doing what is right. Amen.